scared people off with your message that they were not going to like it.
It's tough stuff actually. Today, you'll like it. Have you had a look at it?
No.
No. Okay, you're a good trick. So we are. So we've been working our way.
Handy?
Yeah, just over there.
Too far from your rabbi's office.
What bar mitzvah is it inside? Do they do that here?
Yes, fortunately. Otherwise, I don't know what I would do.
I'll need English, I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's some English as well coming up. Let me just find the place. We are. It's the second sheet in down here. I've got some English. Yeah, Jason's away. I'm not sure who's.
This is Hebrew. So
Yeah,
I
so
don't
there's.
really I don't read
yeah.
it.
So there's. We're 10-4. Hi, Brian. Welcome. How are you? Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach. What do you want one of these?
Okay, so I don't need the Hebrew.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
All right.
indecipherable to me.
Then we are here.
Even with vowels.
Picking up there. So we're working our way through this kind of. This is Faith and Gary. This is Brian. I met Gary in India many moons ago. So we're working our way through. It's called bereishit rabbah, which means great bereishit. So the classic collection of rabbinic commentary on Genesis, and we are just at the end of the first story of creation, where it says "Vayichul hashamayim ba'aretz," when God created, when God finished creating the heavens and the earth. And it's not always as technical as this, but this is quite technical. Do you want to?
Grown.
Yeah, usually it's a lot of fun, some really interesting theological ideas and things like that. But we'll see how we do. Lester, do you want to? We'll go back to the beginning of 10:4 because.
Okay, so
We'll take
so just read the bit in the Torah.
I wouldn't even.
Wouldn't bother.
Wouldn't bother.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, Vayasem Sham.
Sorry, 10:4. Where? Sorry, the beginning of 10:4.
Isn't that 10:4?
You're.
I'm on the wrong chapter.
There we go. 10. That's
Oh,
10.
I'm in a different. 10.
Kuf Lamed.
Okay.
Kuf Lamed Chet.
Okay, I was on 11:4. Rabbi Hoshaya. Okay, so Rabbi Hoshaya said, Darash Rabbi.
Sorry, his name is Ephes. Darash.
Oh, Rabbi Ephes. Rabbi nothing. Okay.
Well, yeah, which is a kind of a really
Very
strange
name.
Okay, so I didn't know this guy Rabbi Ephes, and it's strange because Ephes is the Hebrew word for nothing, and it's a kind of an odd and just like a really really odd name. I don't, does not appear very much, and maybe this next word is the clue.
Antioch. He was in Antioch.
He was in Antioch, right? So I just thought I'd pull up the map of Antioch, and it's really a long way away, right? So he's not part of the kind of the chevra. He's not part of the group of people who are sort of, whose names we know. Mind you, there are lots of names. Come in. Of people who, hi, welcome. We are in Antioch. And it was certainly a perfectly major center of Jewish learning, but it's maybe we ought not to be surprised to see some stuff. Hi, Jake, welcome. Which comes from slightly outside of the center of Jewish stuff.
I wonder if Zero Mostel was named after the
Was
star.
named after him. That's very funny. What is Zero? Is Zero Mostel genuinely Zero?
No idea.
No, I don't think Zero is his name.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
Nemo. It's like,
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah.
Okay, so Darash Rabbi Ephes ba'Antiochia. Ein lashon vayochulu, ela lashon makah, ulashon kraya. When the Torah uses the word vayochulu and God finished or completed, It's only used for indicating a makkah, a plague, or
Whack. Yes.
a whack.
Yeah.
Ulashon klaya. So that is, presumably that's the same root.
So,
Klaya.
yeah, good. Right, so if you would say to somebody, what does chol mean? They would say, all, right? I mean, it's not it's a perfectly well-known word. But when you verbify it, and I mean, this is something that we sing on Friday night, by Chulu Hashemayim Bahar. It's when God alled the heavens and the earth. I mean, the classic Midrash, which we'll come to, is that this was bridal, right? From the word kala, meaning a bride. But here we have kalaya, which is a whack, therefore suggesting that it was a whack. So, we'll see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? I mean, part of the problem is that because of the way that Hebrew functions with these shorashim, with these roots that just get used for absolutely everything. Kuf lamed chet. Yeah, here we are. We're just going to pick up with this mashal here. Is that we don't, you have to have lots of stretches of roots to mean lots and lots of different things, and sometimes the connections aren't always clear, and sometimes
it gives you flexibility, doesn't
gives
it?
you flexibility, right?
Okay, mashal. So he's going to give a parable which illustrates it. Lemelech shenechnas b'medina v'kilsu oto b'nei hamedina. So he went into a town or a country or a city or whatever, and they praised him, the residents of the Medina. Okay. V'orev lo klisan harbe.
Sorry, erev lo klisan.
Oh, okay. And
Erev is to enjoy, is to delight.
Okay,
Please.
so they made a big celebration for presumably.
Well, right. So they did kalis. Which is it's a Roman greeting, hailing, emperor arriving thing, which we kind of do now. We do this to the Sefer Torah, kalis. So the king turns up, and everybody goes, "Yay, go king!" And the king is very pleased, right? He's pleased with their klisan, with their kalising him. So what did he do?
Hirba lahen bitzida, hibar lahen beditza, hibar lahen bahad yochin.
Okay, now those are two words that I
I
found
don't know what those words mean.
rather confusing. So fortunately, I found a little bit of work on
Fortunately,
it.
we've got
Right, so dancing and rejoicing. But here's the really interesting one: the square bracket. I'm just bouncing around. Have you? Sorry.
Is there the actual section of Torah that the Midrash is on?
Yeah, we're gonna be on one word,
Okay.
which is so the word is and God finished. So usually translated as. And the heaven and earth were finished and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished from the work that he had been doing, and he ceased on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. But we are going to spend rather a lot of time working on this word, vayachulu.
Well, before you do that, you mentioned before about Antioch? Was that a major centre for Jewish?
It was a centre for Jewish something. It was a more major centre for Christian stuff. I mean, there's a lot of church father activity. I mean, the at this time, where are we historically? Round about the year 400. So there is a lot of church activity. The church fathers are in their dominant kind of period. And Antioch is a major centre.
This is in Egypt, is it?
Here.
It's Syria, just like
No, Turkey. I mean, it's
Southern
above,
Turkey.
right? I mean, it's. I mean, I
That's
suppose
still Aleppo?
it's level with Aleppo, but on the Turkish side.
Yes, it's a purely Christian country. That's where Apostle Paul converted.
Yeah. And there's a letter from Antioch. I mean, Antioch
Paul
is.
must have been
Acts of
there.
Apostles.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it's certainly a major centre. I don't think there's any Christian polemic going on here. But, right. So just this. So on the handout with this word beditza b'chedva, right? It's a Sheva Brachot word that we know from from weddings, but it looks like it's been spelt correctly. So the little square bracket here, so I'm looking at this in the. So this is the dictionary of rabbinic Hebrew. It's called by somebody called Jastrow. The Genesis Rabbah, section 10, beginning, right? So, it should say, but ritza, which comes from the root running, right? That he put on running things. Well, that's it. Yeah, okay. So now if we get the next word, it will all make more sense. So he put on for them. So the king's happy, and he put on runnings, races. Next. And he put on for them Bahad Yochin, and that again, we've got typos going on here, and it says not Bahad Yochin, but Diadochin. I don't know if you can kind of work out what's gone on there. Is that what's Had Yochin here is actually not a hey, but a dalad and a yud. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So this is all. I mean, all of this is manuscripts right up until really quite late. It's being copied by people who are not the best copyists. Your best copyists are doing Torah scrolls. Your next best copyists after that are doing things like the Talmud. By the time you're getting down to the people who are copying this stuff out, quite often they're not copying carefully, and they don't know what the Latin words are. Right? What is the Latin word for diodiokin? The gladiatorial circus. Right, so if the king is happy with the people, what does the king put on for them? Races and circuses, or as it used to say,
was it bread and circus?
Bread and circus, yeah. Right? Exactly. So I mean, it's been miscopied. When you can understand also how ritza becomes ditza. Yeah, that you've got a reish or you've got a dalet. Those two things are very small. Right? There's that lovely midrash about how you say the Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Because you've got to pronounce it dalad to make sure that you're not pronouncing it acher, other. Right? God is one, not God is another God. So
that's why the dalad is
and the dalad is written large, and you've got to really make sure that you see that. And there's a whole bunch of midrashim around that that you shouldn't pronounce v'lo techalalu et shem kodshi, v'lo tehalalu et shem kodshi. You shouldn't pronounce "Thou shalt not profane my name," thou not praise my name. So I mean, it's just kind of interesting to see copying mistakes because we're playing with Latin-influenced words from a rabbi who's in Antioch. I mean, it's just kind of interesting to see the way that Judaism, I mean, in some ways, Faith, the story of Jewish cooking and the way in which what we call Jewish food that comes out of a Iraqi Judaism is going to be so different from a Jewish food that comes out of a Polish Judaism, because we're kind of watching that play out in the textual tradition also, that we've got these words that are coming in that made complete sense in this Latin-speaking, Greek-influenced Antioch, that at a certain point when somebody is copying that out 500 years later, I don't know where this particular manuscript is coming from, maybe in somewhere like Warsaw or something, they've lost the original bit. So you've got these strange words, don't really quite make sense. Hadyochin doesn't really mean anything, but diochin means circus, hence bread and circuses.
But did they say an example, say the Middle Ages, would they have realised these were copying mistakes, or?
I mean, there's some work that goes on early. I mean, the kind of one of the earliest people is the guy who did the Torah Tamim. I don't know if you can see that little brown sort of set of. Weirdly enough, there are 6 books in that, right? I'm not quite sure how. I have two versions of one of Chumash. I'm not quite sure why it ever happened there, but that's Rabbi Epstein, who I think died in kind of 1890, that kind of period, and he was one of the first people who started looking at, and this is what he was doing, appearances of things in the Midrash and appearances of things in the Talmud, and saying maybe they're trying to work out what the correct language was at that point. There's another really interesting book called the Aruch, which is the oldest dictionary of rabbinic Judaism, and they're trying to kind of explain the Latin, explain the Greek, explain Arabic influenced words. It's all much older than the discovery of Akkadian and Cyrillic, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff which is, but it's a continual journey, and the more that people find out,
I mean, this is what is being looked at in the
the academy, in the universities.
What's it called? Wissenschaft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, this is
trying to work out what on earth these words just mean, right? Because we, so there you get a word that comes from a different culture. Is first is written in Hebrew script, but then gets misspelled, and then gets miscopied. And it can be a journey to pick this up. I think it has to be Ritza. We'll see. It has to be like frenetically fun stuff.
Well, also you get people who are translating that since it's phonetically and they don't know the word, they're going, "Oh, that doesn't make any sense." And that's been a big issue, I think, in translations of the Torah since whenever, or it doesn't sound nice to their ears, so they change it around. And
Yeah. There's deliberate stuff. There's accidental stuff. I mean, the famous story is told about Finkelstein, who was a great Louis Ginsberg, who was a great biblical scholar, a great scholar of Isaiah, and the chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, who would read Haftarah, correcting Isaiah as he thought Isaiah would have done it if only Isaiah's Hebrew would have been as good as his Hebrew was. Right, so you get that kind of stuff.
But you see that in the Gemara as well. In the Talmud, you see square brackets and round brackets, which indicate that there's either been a miscopying or words left out or something like that.
It's really complicated, and I mean, one of the things that has we've realised, particularly since the discovery of the Geniza, is that some of the great classic problems of the Talmud, the things around which, how could the Rambam have said this because of the thing and the thing and the thing and the, it turns out that the Rambam clearly had a different version of the text. The word "een" means yes, and the Hebrew word "ein" means no, right? So I mean, these are really very subtle when you're writing stuff out without vowels.
There's it's not exactly Torah, but there's an episode of the original Star Trek where they're on this world and they're
some people would claim that to be Torah.
and they're reading their source document for all their thing, and eventually Jim realizes that it's the U.S. Constitution, but they don't know the words, so they've broken them in different parts, and it's gibberish to them because they assign meaning to the word groups.
Interesting. One of the Sifrei Torah that we've got here has a very, very small gap between words, and it's a deliberate scribal decision because there's a whole thing about when the Messiah turns up, there'll be another word added to the alphabet, and the spaces will change, and it will change the entire meaning. Another letter to the alphabet, and it will change the entire meaning of everything, so that everything will make perfect sense, which is such an interesting idea. So this scribe has written it with very, very small spaces between the words. It's a complete nightmare for me to read, but really, really interesting. Yeah, let's come back and do it right here.
Lechazman, after a while, hich isu oto. So the king got annoyed with them, or they bothered him.
Yes, let's make sure that we work this one out, right? The king is above all of this, but they have angered him.
They have angered the king.
Sorry, it's not the king's fault. Sorry, that's the point. There's no right.
Umiat lahen beritza or ditza.
Very good.
Umiet lahen behadyochen. So he reduced the amount of dancing and circus activity for them because he was annoyed. Yep. They annoyed him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, just for those of you who haven't been here before, we see this a lot in Midrash. That you get a parable which opens with the word mashal. So we've got a parable. This one is, and most parables are about a king who's obviously going to be God. But there is a parable about a king, and then it then says kach, which gives us what we call the nimshal, right? The corollary of the parable. What's the parable really about?
Okay, kach. Similarly, ad shelo chata adam harishon, until the first man sinned, hayu hamazalot mahalchin derech ketzara umehirut. I don't know, is the mazalot must be the constellations?
Correct. Yes.
The stars were moving. I guess we're giving him good fortune.
They were moving quickly. Sorry, they were going by a direct route and quickly. Right. Yeah. The stars are zipping around. So here we embark upon 1,500 year old astrology. They've got a lot of it wrong. It's going to be, this is it's not a bad midrash, I suppose, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be so helpful for us, right? So it used to be before the first sin that the stars were spinning around and just keep on going.
Mishachata, once he sinned, Sivavan derech aruka uvametinut. Their movement was cut back. Uvametinut. Metinut, I don't know what that means.
And slow down.
Just slowing down. Okay.
Right. So I'm in the commentary below, where it says of Mahirut. Here, yeah. So Hayu Yamim B'Shanim Holchim, that the days and the years would go. V'Haperot V'Chol Smiach V'Hitpatut Hanivraim Asher Al Haaretz Na'asim B'Mahirut, and the fruit would come out quickly. So that's the point, right? So this is the bread and circuses. That before there was sin, you'd get fruit coming out really, really fast. You'd plant a tree, next day apples. You'd plant some seed, next day wheat. So you didn't have to do this sort of hanging around thing for harvesting. I mean, I don't know quite enough about the history of agriculture or the history of astrology, and I did a bit of trying to dig around to try and work out what's going on. How advanced was agriculture at this time? My sense is that there is the beginning of the domestication of wheat at this point, right? So people are deliberately planting crops and actually, waiting through the cycles. We've got a lot of stuff that people are aware of the seasons and all of this kind of stuff. We've got loads of Midrashim about orchards and things like that. So there is that sense of it, but it's. We live in a world whereby you can buy strawberries at any point in the year, and we've lost our kind of seasonality. But you have to kind of go back to a time when, at the end of the harvest season, you had what you had, and you needed to make that last until the following spring, and that would be tough. But if the seasons are zipping around much more quickly, then you're not going to worry about running out. So.
What's he trying to say?
What he's trying to say is that if only we hadn't sinned, we would have had new harvests of food coming every couple of weeks. We'd have never run out. Winter would have been a week and a half, and then it would have been summer again. That's the point. I mean, I suppose the one interesting idea about that, and I don't imagine that this is in any way connected, is that what most people would now say about the relationship between the 7 days of creation and real history is that those days are not 24-hour days. Those are eons, and there are billions of years and billions of years, and that you can't really start counting kind of proper time up until much later. But certainly there is a sense here that during the 7 days of creation before the sin, time the time was flying much faster. The years were flying much faster. It's then, we're now. Yeah, let's. This is all rather strange stuff.
Okay, yesh mazal shegomer hilucho l-12 chodesh. There are some constellations.
Well, there is a mazal, right? There is a heavenly. I was trying to find out this. When did we realize that planets were different from stars? I think a lot earlier than this. But there is a Hebrew term for heavenly stuff, right, which includes moons, planets, and stars, and entire constellations. They are all the mazalot. So that anything. So that you have a mazal.
So where do the heavenly spheres come into this? Is that later? Or?
That's later, but I think the ancients knew they called the planets movable stars, because the planets move from one constellation to another over a period of years, and so they knew that planets were different from stars.
But I'm not sure they quite understood that they weren't light emitting, right? That the light that you would see from a planet was a reflection of the light that needed to come from a star.
They didn't really know that, but they knew that there was something different about Mars and Venus and Jupiter compared to, Sirius and the other bright stars.
So there is a mazal that takes 12 months to go to do its thing, right? Sheholicho. I mean, again, this was all Earth-centric, right? So everything is orbiting the Earth rather than we're orbiting the sun, and then But there's a thing that takes 12 months to orbit out, and that what's that? That's
Kigon Kochav Chama, like the sun and then the stars.
no, like the star called sun.
Oh.
Right, so it takes 12 months for the sun to do
get
its
back,
thing,
yeah.
right? Which we would understand to say it takes 12 months for us to go around the sun.
V'yesh mazal shehu gomer hilucho l'shloshim yom v'hi levana. So the moon goes through a cycle of a month. Right?
Although, interestingly enough, it's not 30 days,
Yeah, it's
right?
28.
No.
It's 28 days, and then the
So
rabbis,
it's
the rabbis,
actually
Why this
29 and a half.
translation is really, have you followed along with the translation? The translation is, it's saying on the moon, so it's missing all that stuff up to between the bread and circuses
uh-huh.
and the planets. All that stuff is not in there. So,
Too controversial.
okay.
Well, maybe it's just wrong. I mean, sometimes it's because they're using they're doing a
text.
different manuscript.
Right.
But sometimes they just don't bother translating this kind of stuff. As I say, it's usually a lot more juicy, but here we're just running through what they understood.
V'yesh mazal shegomer hilucho l'shtei esrei shana v'hu tzedek. That must be Jupiter.
Correct. Which takes 12 years to return to the same place around in the context of Earth, right?
Or in relation to the other stars.
Right.
So if Jupiter is now in, for example, in Virgo, another 12 years it'll be back in Virgo. V'yesh mazal shehu gomer hilucho l'shloshim shana v'hu shabtai. That must be Saturn.
Good. Also known as Saturdays, Shabbatai. I mean, so always Shabbat, right? So it's and I don't know the origin of Saturday and Saturn and Shabbat and Shabbatai, but there's obviously
Have something
there's
to do with
obviously
each other.
connecting there.
Chutz.
So all of these have now been slowed down, right? So back in the original version, they were all going much more quickly, but now they've slowed down. Jupiter, for example, now takes a full 12 years to go around, right?
Because man sinned.
Because man sinned, right? I mean,
Well, that's the mashal, the other half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not making any claim for the accuracy of this, but there are
Chutz min kochav noga.
right. Sorry. Chutz min kochav, which is Venus, Noga, which is Mercury, and Ma'adim, which is Mars. I mean, they called one of the planets Kochav, which is the Hebrew word for star, which is a kind of it's pretty suggesting they really don't have the slightest clue as to what's going on here.
She'ein gomrim hiluchan ella la'arba me'ot u'shmonim shana. That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense at all, right? Which finish their going round. It takes them 480 years to go round. Well, that's entirely wrong, and most manuscripts say that it's not Shana; it should be Yamim. You know what? I'm going to suggest that we just skip to the end of this little bracket, which doesn't. Trust me, it will not. I mean, but basically, the end of this bracket is somebody asks a question, somebody goes, "What? That makes absolutely no sense to us." Well, chazina tameya lefichach ba'ashela. This thing this guy's asked makes absolutely no sense at all. We know that it doesn't go around 480 years. So let's pick it up with Rabbi Pinchas. Can everyone see where we are? We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 line down.
Rabbi Pinchas b'shem Rabbi Chanan de Tziporan. Is that from Tziporia?
Yeah.
So Rabbi Pinchas, in the name of Rabbi Chanan, Tani, he learned, Benot Shuach b'shana shniya shel Shemitah. The daughters of Shuach is a place.
No, sorry. Back on here. This is a Mishnah. So Tani, whenever you see Tani, it's a sign that he's going to teach a Mishnah, right? So the Mishnah, the oldest versions of rabbinic teaching, and this is a Mishnah from Shavuot, which is the laws of sabbatical stuff. So the classic sabbatical law is that you can do whatever you like for 6 years, and in the 7th year you can't touch the fruit. But there are certain kinds of fruit, for example, banot shuach, the white fig, that they are not. You don't observe the sabbatical on the white fig in the 7th year. Why? I'm just if you can see it on the sheet, you've got it here on the sheet. Their sabbatical year is the 2nd year because it takes 3 years for the fruit to come through, right? And so if you realize 3 years, the first year is what we were calling the 7th year, the second year is the first year, and the third year is the second year, right? So, Brian, can you see where we are? We're here.
Okay.
Yeah, so Tani, he's going to bring us a Mishnah. He's going to prove that it takes too long for the fruit to happen, because there is this fruit that takes 3 years to happen.
Well, it sits on the tree for 3 years until it becomes a fruit?
No, it becomes a fruit and then it ripens.
It takes...
It takes 3 years for the tree to create the fruit.
No.
All trees do.
No. Yes, exactly. It's not... Sorry, Gary, when you say that, you mean you plant a tree, you need to come back 3 years later before you can take fruit from it. It's not saying that. It's saying this. It's saying that it takes 3 years to produce the fruit, and just to see what's going on here. Do you want
This is very odd, because normal figs, not only they produce 2 crops in the year.
Right. Well, this is not a normal fig. This is the Banot Shor. I did a little bit of googling on the white fig, and all I could see was some pictures of figs that when you cut them open, they don't look red inside.
Yeah,
they look white. But I couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm chasing. I'm as you all this. Like this is stuff that you could spend a master's dissertation getting involved in if you were so interested, which I'm afraid I'm not. But
I think there's a distinction between when the fruit's produced on the tree and when it's ready to eat.
Well, let's just see what's going on here, because they're gonna try and explain what's going on.
Benot shuach b'shana shniya shel shmita noheg kedushat shvi. So you observe the sabbatical year for them, the second year after the Shemitah, because presumably the Shemitah was the first year.
Correct. So 7 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3.
Right.
Yeah? You all with me? Yeah.
So then you give Shemitah in that year.
Of the white fig.
Yeah.
You kind of like, you just don't pick your white figs. Whether or not you're allowed to pick those white figs in the 7th year, that would be quite handy. I mean, if there were things that you could kind of properly farm in the 7th year, I'm sad, and I don't know about that, but yeah. Right, Lefi.
Lefi she'osot perot l'shalosh shanim.
Because they take fruit.
They take 3 years, but this is mad, because not all the trees were planted at the same year. So if they take 3 years, some of them will have the 3rd year on the Shemitah, some of them have the 3rd year in the year after the Shemitah, some of them have the 3rd year. It's 2 years after the Shemitah. It doesn't really make sense.
I'm just sorry. I was doing this slightly earlier this morning, and it was explaining that the first one it buds, and then it comes in the knot between the thing and the. We'll come to it. We'll come to it. Right. So it is this idea that this fruit it does an initial thing in the sabbatical year, which means that you therefore can't go back and get it until you can't pick the ripened fruit in the 2nd year of a cycle. But yeah, you're right. It is mad.
Doesn't make sense. Okay.
Yes.
Aval atid, in the future, lavo hakadosh baruch hu merape ota maka.
Hang on, I think you skipped a line. Va'oto hayom. So va'oto hayom. So that is on the 3rd day of creation, when the trees were begun, right? Osupero ben yoman. It made fruit on that day. So it now takes 3 years to produce fruit, but when it was originally created before the sin, it created fruit on that day. Fine. Aval.
The atid, in the future, lavo hakadosh baruch hu merape ota. God will come along and repair the situation. R'mapeota maka, shne'amar u'machatz machato yirpa, machatz machato shel olam yirpa. So he will repair the makah, the clop.
Mm-hmm. The whack, right.
And there's a quote from Isaiah.
Yeah, which I've got for you here. Right, and this is bayom, right? Yeah. So there's
Why is he mentioning this white fig? I mean,
sorry, the white fig, which takes 3 years to produce fruit, but before the sin produced fruit in a day, is a proof that in the beginning, God had the stars and the sun zipping around, so everything was producing fruit very, very quickly. But since we've sinned, it now takes a lot longer to produce fruit. It's all rather tenuous and self-serving. Moreover, right. So this is now talking about just this Isaiah verse, just at the top of the second page of the handout. In Atid Lavor, in this sort of heavenly future. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as light as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold as the light of the 7 days, as in the 7 days of creation. Right, in the day that the God binded up the bruise of his people and healeth the stroke of their wound. Right, when God kind of makes better the original. So I'll use the Christian terminology, the original sin. I tell you, it was a bit odd. This next one is also a little odd. You want to go have a go reading? No. Let's do it. We're still with you.
He's doing a fine job.
He's done an amazing job. You like to read on?
Okay. Omer Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Nishtachlelu shamayim b'chama ulevana u'mazalot.
Okay, so we're still playing with this word vayachulu, and on my little sheet, on my little handout, I've just kind of pulled some of the things that we've got around this word vayachulu, which you need never have thought was a problematic verb. You just, partly because that verse is just so liturgically central, but it cholal means to sort of surround or to sort of like fence off or to create the edge for. Also to kalal, to crown, which would suggest a certain sense that as it finishes, it is adorned. The last thing that you put on, right? I mean, you've got that. I don't know. Have you seen anyone here watching The Crown? The last thing that goes on, is the crown itself. Also, it's something to do with a bridal room, connecting to the verb for kala, or surround, to include, comprise, include, all these kind of rather strange.
He's not worried about putting an extra lump in the root.
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. Right? So here we're getting that the world was. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said that the heaven is nishtachlu, is crowned or is finished off, right, with the Chama and the Levana,
the sun, the moon, and the stars.
That they serve as a kind of an adornment, as the sort of the crowning glory of the Shemaim, of the heavens.
V'nishtachlela haaretz, and the earth was crowned be'ilanot uvadesha'in began Eden, by trees, grasses, and the Garden of Eden.
Right, so that they're kind of serving as the sort of the finishing off of these kinds of things. Fair enough.
Rabbi Simon b'shem Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi mecholalin hayu hamaasin v'hayu motchin v'holchin. So there was.
This is a bit Platonic.
The mecholalin hayu hamaasin.
So mecholalin, this kind of concludingness, right, means that you took the actions of them and you activated their potential, all right, or you closed off their ideational development, right? I mean, so that that big idea of a Platonic ideal, that there was some sort of original form which is iterated into a reality that you and I can actually see. There is some kind of Platonic idea of book which gets iterated into a real book. So what happened over the 7 days of creation is that God sort of finished off the movement from Platonic ideal into some kind of physical reality.
Sort of like initiated them. They were there in concept, in principle.
I mean, it's like, I mean, it's interesting. What's coming is Job, and I think that, I mean, you can see it on the little handout. I've got Job 14, Job 7. I think, and Job. There's another bit of Job that's coming up. Job 38. So and I think it's helpful just to kind of work out what's going on with Job in general, which is that God says, Job suffers. Job says to God, "Why am I suffering?" And God says, "What do you know about me? Didn't I?" And the language continually says, "Didn't I fence in the sea? Didn't I stop the volcano from completely destroying you? Didn't I put an edge on the wild animals from ripping you to pieces?" So there is this sort of sense, from a sort of a Jobian sense of creation, that it's all about reining in creation. And you have to go back to a time when the real world is very dangerous. Nowadays we're so powerful and the earth is so beaten up by us that we've kind of we're flipped over here. But that God put an edge on the world, and there's that sort of sense that the world was going to sort of take over everything and had to be sort of restrained in. So Vayichulu is a kind of, we had this sort of idea of that Vayichulu is a kind of a whack, it's a kind of a limitation, or it's a beating.
It's constraining.
It's a constraining. Because otherwise it just would have been too wild and it just would have, poured over everything. So there's this sort of sense that it needs to be sort of pulled in that kind of sense, and edged off. All right. So Vayichulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzva'am. This is the original biblical verse. It was at the end of the making of the heavens and the earth and all of their tzava. Right, tzava. I mean, it's Motzei Yom HaZikaron, or Yom HaTzmo. It's tzava lahagana Yisrael. Right, the Israel Defense Forces. Right, so the tzava is usually translated as hosts. And Chabad
doesn't mean anything either.
Doesn't mean anything either, right? But it does. It might suggest some kind of military. I mean, the host of a king, right? You'd expect. I mean, you have in mind a kind of a chariot, and alongside all these kind of primping horsemen with their sort of halberds and all that kind of stuff. So that
cohort.
Right. But maybe, I mean, there's some sort of again limiting military something that's going on here.
Okay. So what is? Are they trying to explain what is this?
Yeah, what's going on? Tzva'am. Who are the hosts of heaven?
Omar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar said, "Shlosha tzva'im." There are 3 different types of tzva'im. And
so there's a comment down here that is to do with military service. That there was what we would. In contemporary Hebrew, you would talk about they talk about the giyus, the conscription, right? You get a giyus of 3 years if you're a man, 2 years if you're a woman. But you have your period of being in the army. So that's what tzava is to be understood as a period of service that you come to the end of. That's what we're dealing with. There are these 3 tzva'im.
Okay, so shlosha tzva'im. Tzava l'shamayim v'la'aretz. 1 tzava for the heavens and the earth. V'tzava l'talmidim, and 1 tzava for scholars. V'tzava l'yisurin. Yisurin, I don't know what that means.
We should study that. Pain, woe, pain. Yisurin shel ahava. Do you know that? Sugya and brachot. Oh, interesting. Right, and there is a fixed term, right? And I think that's there is a fixed term for there is a fixedness for the heavens and the earth. There is a fixedness for students, and there is a fixedness for suffering.
Okay. Tzava l'shamayim v'aretz shene'amar vayichulu hashamayim v'aretz v'chol tzva'am. So he says the fixedness of the heaven and the earth is...
The proof text of this is that it says that God finished, or God fixed, the tzava of the heavens and the earth. That's fair enough, proof text. Still don't quite know what that means, or that sense. I think just having that kind of Jobian thing there is, I hope, a little helpful. That that there are people who have. Is that it's to do with putting a limit on it, stopping them from just taking over everything.
Tzava Talmidim minayin. Where does he get the idea that there is a fixed period for Talmidim? Shene'amar, and he's quoting Job. Kol yemei tzva'i ayachel ad bo chalifati.
So here, Job. I've given you the verse on the handout. All the days of my service would I wait till my relief comes. The comment on this says this is about being a student until you become a teacher, and somebody else becomes the student. The kind of sense, listen, maybe the yogic thing is a kind of piece of this. You don't stop becoming a student. That you have to continually be a student until basically your teacher dies, and then you become the teacher, and hopefully somebody kind of comes in to be your student.
I mean, in this period, they had academies, didn't they?
They had these academies. I mean, the classic seating in the Sanhedrin is so interesting. Was that the newest person who came into the Sanhedrin sat at the bottom of the front bench, at the back of the rear bench, and you would, and it would move up in seniority until you got to the front of the front bench. And when somebody died, everybody just sort of moved up, new space at the beginning, and in comes somebody else. So, this is, they're choosing this verse because it does say my tzvai, and who is talking? Well, it's a student. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit tenuous.
But I don't even know why they're doing it. I don't even know what the great gift is to sort of do this. It's all. This is not my favourite part of the Midrash. There's a really nice one coming.
The tzavali yisurim and the limitation of pain, minayan, where does that come from? Also from Job. Halo tzava le'enosh ale aretz.
You've got that here as well.
Is there not a time of service to man upon earth?
Are his days not like the days of a hireling? Let's just keep going. As a servant eagerly longs for the shadow. Why does a servant long for the shadow? What happens when the shadows come?
Gets off work.
You get off work. And as a hireling looketh for his wages, what happens to a hireling at the end of the day?
Gets
Gets paid, right? We've got biblical verses on this. You can't keep the pay of a hireling. So so you're looking for the dark to come. What's darkness? Death. Yeah, right. So I mean, this is sort of slightly life after death kind of stuff, right? That we're here in this world and it's tough and we're suffering and it's painful and we're looking forward to the darkness when we stop having to work, right? When we die and we get some kind of rest in peace, or however that wants to you want to understand that. Yeah.
V'chol tzivyono shel adam eino ela al haaretz.
3 more words.
Sorry?
3 more words.
Uma hanialo. What is that?
All the struggles, Tivon, right? All the work of a human being is to still be alive, is to be on this earth, right? Here we are, we're running around, we're trying desperately to survive on this earth, What's the point? What's the point? What does it get him? Because you only get paid
at the end.
When
End
you're
of the
dead.
day.
I think this says a lot about the condition of the Jews of that period.
Does say a lot about the condition of the Jews of the period. Absolutely right. Life is really tough.
Yeah.
Although I think, and maybe partly about the way in which we run around after stuff for the sake of what exactly? What's the actual purpose of all this scurrying? Yeah. Sorry, he says, so what is the kates? What is the savah of Yisurin? What is the end of suffering?
Death.
Cherry thought. This next little bit. Let me just do this little bit here. Right, Nachman, Barei de Rab Shmuel bar Nachman. Nachman, who is the son of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. Really nice example of somebody being named after their grandfather, right? It's like carrying on the name. So what does he say?
Amar im zachat tzava lo. If he's worthy, then there will be a limitation to.
Well, he'll get army, he'll get military support, right? Im zacha tzava lo. If he's worthy, there's a tzava for him.
V'im lav, if he's not worthy, tzava alav.
Alav. That if he's not worthy, then the army is on him, right? If you do well, you get a tzava. If you don't do well, the tzava is against you.
But is he talking now about
Change
tzava being army, or is he talking about it being limitations?
No, army. Some kind of a host for him or a host against him. You do well, you get a host. You do badly, the host is against you.
Bana binyan Allah biyado.
Good, yeah.
Bana binyan.
You build a building, and it goes up because of your work.
Alav yado tzavalo.
You get an army. Well done.
Nafam. He's trying to explain the difference between tzavalo and tzavalav.
Yes.
You build with nafal mimenu b'meit. If he fell off his building and he died, tzavalav. So it means that the tzava was against him.
Right. I mean, I kind of feel like this is something to do with the verse about the parapet, right? That you should put a parapet on your building so that you don't have blood on your hands. But I think it's saying, you build a building and it's a good building, then well done. People will come. You build a building, somebody falls off the building and dies. Yeah, you haven't built your building properly.
Achal pito v'hanayatu tzavalo. If he ate his pat lechem, is it?
His pita. Yeah, if he ate a pita and enjoyed it,
that's tzavalo.
It's good for him.
Amda betoch grono v'hanakatu tzava alav. So he's standing in the middle.
No. If he swallows the bread and it gets stuck in his
throat,
and the chanik
choked him,
and it choked him. So I mean, this is just not great midrash, I'm afraid. Keep going. I'm not going to say it right now.
Harbei tzvaim mina hakadosh baruch hu. So God created many tzvaim. L'adam hazeh litboa dikayon shelo. Dikayon.
Punishments. Penalties.
To cause them
right, so God
penalties.
had all kinds of hosts that he could use to kind of extract justifiable punishment from human beings.
Harbe dubeh, harbe arayot, harbe nechashim, harbe srafim, harbe akrabim. So there were snakes and lions and snakes and fires. Srafim,
fiery snakes, I guess, right? They have to be some kind of wild animal. I mean, it's usually it's translated some kind of a fiery angel, but of course, angels. The original snake, right? The original snake was an angel, and akrabim, scorpions.
Below od ela kimei sachir yamav. In addition, at the end of his days, he gets his reward and dies.
Right. So no. It's even worse than that. It's even worse than that. So God's got all kinds of ways to punish people during their life with all these kind of wild animals. Right. The wild is a scary place, and not only that, but at the end of the days, God will take whatever, if there's more punishment needed to be done sort of up in the heavenly court, you'll get that as well.
So he doesn't even get respite after he's dead.
Well, not if he deserves a kind of, I don't know.
It's a bit like the book of Ecclesiastes, isn't it, this, in a way? What will be, will be.
Well, I mean, my Yitron law is definitely ecclesiastical. This is kind of worse. This is a vision of a scary world where you get punished according to your deserts, and if you haven't been punished enough while you're alive, you'll get more when you're dead.
Can I ask what was going on contemporarily that might have influenced
it's horrible.
rabbis?
It's horrible.
Because, they were going, what was going on around them that this is their interpretation? It's certainly not joy and light.
Correct. And I think there are two things I think to say about that. One is that we live in worlds of safety. Back then it was scary because there were lions and tigers and bears, and there were droughts, and there were famines,
and Romans.
And right, technologically we were not at the point where we're at. Right, the really interesting opening to Yuval Noah Harari's book Homo Deus. Right, in history, human beings died of war, famine, and disease, and we don't die of those things in those kinds of numbers anymore. But right, and then there are the Romans, right? And and then as if that wasn't bad enough, there's also the fact that you are the butt of, you're getting the sand kicked in your face by the Romans the entire time, and it's not at all an easy life. We're no longer in the very depths of that kind of post-Bar Kokhba period when these famous rabbis were having the skin ripped from their bodies and burned at the stake. It's not quite that bad, but that's still, I think, haunting these rabbis hundreds of years later. Let me just do a last little bit because it's nice, and there's a really interesting piece here. Ben Sira Amar. We've done this before. Ben Sira said, it's incredibly interesting to me that Ben Sira gets quoted. Right, so there are 24 books in the Torah, and we know that from various reasons, and it wasn't clear at one point which 24 that was, and there was a bit of an argument about Song of Songs, which makes it in. There was a bit of an argument about Ecclesiastes, which makes it in, and it looks like the book that didn't make it in is this book, Ben Sira, or Ecclesiasticus, which was canonized by the Christians, lost by the Jews, because that's what happens to things when you don't canonize them, discovered sitting in the Geniza, here is a quote from Ben Sira.
Was it discovered in Hebrew or in Greek?
It was discovered. Well, we had it in Greek because the Romans, the Roman Catholics, retained it in Greek.
Yeah.
When it was discovered in the Geniza, it was discovered in Hebrew.
Really?
And that's what set Schechter off, right? So Schechter, who was the professor in Cambridge. By the way, there's an exhibition on the Cairo Geniza at the Cambridge University, which we're all going to go to. But there was this sort of pile of stuff, and he looked through it and he saw what he thought was the original Hebrew of Ben Sira, never having seen the original Hebrew of Ben Sira, only having ever seen it in Greek. We've got a few verses from Ben Sira preserved in things like this. I suppose there are about 10 verses that we had preserved in rabbinic texts. But
when was this? Where did he write?
Ben Sira is probably about 200 BCE. So, it's called what the Christian call intertestamental literature. Or apocryphal.
Well, have we discovered any of the other remnants of any
Yeah,
of the other
all
apocryphal
kinds of
books in Hebrew?
all kinds of bits and pieces. Not full works, but all kinds of stuff. Yeah, but Ben Sira was in a different place religiously because it was fringe, right? I mean, there are no quotes from the book of Tobit or Judith or even Maccabees in rabbinic literature, and Ben Sira is the only one that gets quoted in rabbinic literature. So Ben Sira says, Elohei ha'ala samim min ha'aretz. God brought forth drugs from the earth, ubahem marafeh marpeh et hamaka, and with those the doctor cures the disease. Ubahem horokeach markeach et hamrikachat. The apothecary, the chemist, apothecates the disease. Right? So it's a kind of really interesting verse, and I just pulled it up in here. And we'll finish with this because I think actually
some of them are seeds, though, aren't they? Or are they
usually translated as drugs.
Really?
But you might be thinking of basamim, right? Just fragrant spices.
No, I wasn't thinking.
So I think this is a really, really interesting idea, right? All healing is from God. The skill of the physician shall lift up a person's head, and in the sight of great men shall he be praised. For God created medicines out of the earth, and a wise man does not abhor him. Was not bitter water made sweet with wood? The virtue of these things is come to the knowledge of men, and the meat high hath given knowledge to men that he may be honoured in his wonders. And now this verse, right, by these he shall cure and allay their pains, and of these the apothecary shall make sweet confections, and shall make up ointments of health, and of his works there shall be no end. For the peace of God is over all the face of the earth. It's an incredibly radical idea that when you are healing people, you are doing God's will. Right, is distinct from, for example, an idea that you'll sometimes hear from Jehovah's Witnesses, right? That you don't let the blood, or from some of these other, if you are suffering a disease, it must be because God wants you to suffer. No, says Judaism, and you can trace the Jewish love of medicine, I think, to these kinds of ideas, intertestamental ideas, that the world is there to allow you to use it to cure and to make human lives better. I'll do one more line. Amar Rabbi Simon, Ein lecha kol esev ve'esev she'ein lo mazal barakia she'ma'keh oto amar lo gadol. You don't have a single blade of grass in the world that God doesn't whisper over it, saying, grow. That everything is there for a purpose, and we'll see where we get to with some of that. It's quite interesting stuff. But it's all there to make our lives better. Thank you for fighting through that. It's brighter, easier stuff next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go.
Is the book of Ben Sira, is it quite large? Is it, how big is it?
Yeah, it's quite large. It's
never read.
No, it is of no liturgy. It is no Jewish liturgical significance.
But it's in, if